BXB. It's in the game!
3 years ago, Destiny 1 launched on the Xbox One, 360, PS4, PS3, cross-generation, to much fanfare, to much hype, to much anticipation. And at the time, many people felt disappointed by what Activision and Bungie had offered them. So here, subsequently, 3 years later, we have the sequel, Destiny 2, a sequel which was never expected. We were told Destiny would last for us for 10 years, but obviously they've gone back on that. Destiny 1 had a slate of developmental problems, of complete reboots, of terrible production timelines, and all kinds of issues that plagued its development. And even with all that, the game we got, with its threadbare story, its completely crazy way of getting the narrative across to you in these grimoire cards, even with all that, we still had an amazingly, brilliantly, fantastically well crafted first person shooter which felt great, which looked great, which sounded great. And that's why I put in probably more than 1,000 hours into the original Destiny. And I'll be honest, right now, where I am with Destiny 2, I can see the same thing happening once again. Destiny 1 had this crazy story to do with Light and the Traveler, and it was a very conscious decision, I think, for Destiny 2. Let's bring that story down a bit, let's make it less kind of hard to understand and grasp, and let's make it a personal tale about characters and about people. And I think that was really been the strength of it. Now, the game here launches with a sort of a recap of where you are in the universe, who you are in the world, and your relation to it. It then actually does this awesome thing which gives you this kind of slideshow about your accomplishments from the original Destiny, really rooting you into the world. It then also remembers your previous character that you played as in Destiny 1, if you're playing on the same platform, and allows you to then pick up where you left off with that character, at least in its appearance and its class and stuff like that, and just continue straight into Destiny 2. Now, most of you would have seen at this point at least some promotional material for what the concept behind Destiny 2 is. The idea here is that this big bad leader of the Cabal, Ghaul, has shown up at the tower on Earth and has messed everyone's stuff up. You've lost your loot, you've lost the tower, you're now, near death, exiled into the wilds, and that's where the game of Destiny 2 begins. Now, I'm not gonna break down the entire narrative, there's no point, and it would be spoilerific. Obviously, I've already discussed this on the latest episode of BXB's Bits and Bobs. I believe it was number 31, so please check that out for a more in-depth discussion that includes some spoilers. However, I'm not going to get into that now. It's safe to say the story of Destiny 2 is far superior to the story of Destiny 1. It's not so much that the lore is better, the lore is just as rich. Destiny 1's lore perhaps even richer with its inclusion of grimoire cards. But the way the narrative is actually delivered to the player, the way that the story is told through cutscenes and through characters and through NPCs, just makes it more engaging, more conventional, and more exciting for the player. Now, I think the biggest thing I saw and the biggest influence I saw in Destiny 2 that surprised me but makes a lot of sense is that Bungie have gone back to its roots somewhat with Destiny 2. They've looked at the success of Halo, they've looked at how well those games were received, and they've gone, right, let's structure levels, let's put in some things that you might sort of recognise from those Halo games. And I'm not going to spoil them here, because if you haven't played it, it's some great little reveals that make you think, ah, yeah, Halo. Now, that coupled with the fantastic skyboxes, the beautiful visuals, the amazing art design and direction that we have in Destiny 2 makes for a stunning visual experience. Something else that stood out for me, that absolutely blew my mind, was the quality of the music in Destiny 2. Now, obviously, Marty O'Donnell has left Bungie. He's the guy famous for the Halo themes and things like that, and also worked on Destiny 1. And with his departure, the musical design of Destiny 2 has gone in a different direction. We've gone less orchestral, we've got more mixes of synths and rock and metal and other kind of elements. There are distinctive themes for the different alien races that you'll find in Destiny 2. Now, they are reminiscent of the themes we found in Destiny 1, but I feel like these planets and these aliens have a much more specific sound to them, and I absolutely love fighting the Hive and the worlds that they inhabit because of the soundscape. Now, talking of the worlds, there are plenty of new worlds in Destiny 2, plenty of new things to look at and new areas to engage upon. And the ways in which you can engage upon them have been diversified and simplified. You have adventures you can start and lost sectors you can explore. The way in which the director is integrated now into Destiny means you don't have to go to orbit to jump back to specific points of the planet. You can skip about all over the solar system using the director interface directly. Sorry about that. On the menu and stuff like that, which is a real improvement for the usability of the game in Destiny 2 over Destiny 1. So like I said, once you've done the story missions on these planets and things like that, you can then do these adventures, which are these sort of side missions. And there'll be more of those that unlock after the end game as well, and obviously lots of possibility for future adventures to be integrated into these worlds as the DLC is released as we go through the year and into next year. The worlds are beautifully designed. We got Titan, we've got Io, we've got Nessus, I think it is, which is this basically a Vex-made world that you can tell Bungie went, you know what, we just want a place for them to be. We'll just make up like a planetoid that they created for themselves, because why not? It's cool, and it is cool, and it's awesome. And, you know, this is all coupled together as you're watching in the video, which is a lot of me walking around in first person shooting things, because that is what Destiny is. As you're watching here, the gunplay still feels fantastic. That hasn't changed. And to be honest, a lot hasn't changed in Destiny 2. Things such as the way the guns feel, the level designs, a lot of it feels very familiar. The fact that, this is sort of a spoiler, but there are no new enemies in Destiny 2. You're fighting the Cabal, you're fighting the Hive, you're fighting the Fallen, you know, you're fighting the Taken as well. But these are people we've already sort of seen. There's been some tweaks to how they move around the maps, there's been some tweaks to how the different units have different strengths and weaknesses, sure. But at the end of the day, it is very familiar. And that brings up a big criticism, I suppose, for Destiny 2, that this feels more like the sort of expansion pack that was promised in the original design documents for Destiny, how the game was going to be a living, breathing ecosystem over a 10-year period. And that's what this feels like. It doesn't really feel, to me, like a proper sequel. It doesn't feel like it steps things up in a sort of rambunctious way, in a sort of what you'd expect from a sequel. You know, more action, bigger set pieces, more inventive set pieces, things like that. You don't really get that in Destiny 2. What you do get is a brilliant continuation. And like I said, I put 1,000 hours into Destiny 1, and considering this is just more of that, I'm going to do probably the same thing. The grind with the power level now, it's not the light level at the end game, that's definitely in place. As I'm doing this review, I'm in the mid 260s. I've really put a lot of time into the game, and I've enjoyed my time with the game. And, you know, we're about to get the raid. We've got the Nightfall strikes that I've already been trying out and things like that. So the end game is there. Some of the interfaces have been simplified for new players. I think what Bungie have consciously tried to do is remove all the systems that developed over the time between the release of Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 that we saw in Rise of Iron and Taken King and the other expansions, to remove that sort of complicated clutter, to pare things down, to keep the core things the same, but present them in a way that feels much more palatable to somebody coming onto Destiny 2 for the first time. Obviously, Bungie is very much aware that Destiny 2 is launching on PC. Well, hasn't launched yet, but will be, which is a market that Destiny 1 wasn't available on at all. So I think they're trying to understand that a lot of new players will be coming to this experience. And one of the key parts of the Destiny experience that often gets overlooked in discussion of it, because, well, amongst my circles, so many people purely play the PvE experience, so the strikes, the raids, the stories, the quests, things like that. But one element of actually Destiny 2 that I've really enjoyed my time with is the Crucible, the competitive mode in Destiny 2. They've done some streamlining with this as well. There's now just 2 hoppers, quick play and competitive, and within that there are various game types. Some people like, some people don't. The map design is universally strong, and I really like the combination of gunplay, power use, and other things like that. I actually find myself doing quite well in the multiplayer modes on Destiny 2. Much unlike other first-person shooters, I dig the weapons, I understand how the game works, I understand the best use for the guns in the right situations and things like that. I don't find it overly complicated, even though there are so many different builds and things like that for the different characters. There is still a fundamental, easily to understand concept that you jump in, you're all on the same level, at least in this mode. There's no Trials of Osiris or Iron Banner going on yet, in which the power levels matter, though those are coming later. So this mode is sort of, again, streamlined, honed, perfected, some might say, even though perhaps not that different to what we had in the first Destiny. Now, this is why this review is difficult, because so much is the same, because I feel like I've played literally days of Destiny at this point. it's difficult to really hone down the improvements. There's a lot of tweaking. There's a lot of sort of character elements that have been improved. The story is probably the biggest improvement. However, beyond that, I struggle to think of things that really stand out for me. The single player experience is great, but the real kind of quality of Destiny comes from that replayability, the endgame experience. And obviously, I'm fairly early in on that at the moment, which is why we've seen a lot of sort of early reviews that have come out from the bigger outlets or the reviews in progress, because it's very difficult to review a game like this without having spent hundreds of hours playing it, because that's where the real sort of meat of it will come from. Will the end game be engaging enough to keep you coming back? Will those simplifications of the systems, like where they've removed the leveling up of guns and things like that, will that mean you're less interested in coming back again and again and again to grind and to try and get your highest light level and the highest abilities possible out of, say, your weapons or your character? At the moment, I've just got the one character build, but I will be running 3 classes across the 3 slots that are available. My main is a Warlock, and that's who I carried over from the first game. I don't know what that says about me. I hope you don't hate me for it, but I'm definitely a space wizard, and that's the way I'm going to roll. So I've definitely 100% enjoyed my time with Destiny 2 so far. There's obviously a lot more to come, and there'll be further discussions about this on the podcast and the vidcasts as we go forward towards the end of the year. But I think it's a solid release and a really strong platform for development. We've already got one expansion due in December and then another expansion due a little bit into next year. There's a hint at the end of the game for something major, maybe on the horizon for the big sort of expansion in the same vein as the Taken King towards the end of next year. But I think things are going to develop. Bungie are very much aware that this is a live platform that they can update and they can tweak. There's obviously been some controversy so far about the shaders. I think it's a minor thing, and I think that if that's what people are complaining about, the package as a whole is a very, very strong one. So all that taken into account, the fact that this is more of a evolution than a revolution, that it feels less of a sequel and more of an expansion pack. However, what is here is so fantastically well crafted and engaging and fun, and that gunplay is just as good as the first game. That all I can say in summation is, if you loved Destiny 1, you will love Destiny 2. If you had no interest in Destiny 1, with the numbers popping out of people when you shoot them, with that kind of a shooter mechanic, that feel, that basically an open world Halo, if you don't enjoy that, you're not going to enjoy Destiny 2. There is nothing here that is that different from Destiny 1. But as for me, as someone with 1,000 hours in Destiny 1, I very much enjoyed the time here I've spent with it. And as a personal sort of piece, as a review always is, I'm going to give this, Destiny 2, 4 out of 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.